Welcome to the Thoughtful Leader podcast. My name is Ben Brearley. I'm a leadership coach and the founder of Thoughtful Leader. The Thoughtful Leader podcast is all about short, sharp leadership advice because thoughtful leadership is good leadership. Welcome to episode 225 of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. In this episode, I'm going to talk about a simple leadership process you can follow if the whole topic of leadership is becoming a bit confusing and overwhelming and you're not really sure what aspects to focus on. Let's simplify it a bit and sort of dumb it down because sometimes the topic can be quite confusing. There's lots of different theories and things we can look at. So let's ditch some of those and let's go back to basics. We'll get into it right now. Leadership can feel quite overwhelming if we think too hard about it. Now, I've been writing about it since about 2015, and sometimes I feel like I still can't describe it very well. And someone asked me recently how to lead people. They were new to leadership and wanted a starting point. Now, it's a very simple question, and I found my mind racing down multiple rabbit holes to answer it. Should I tell them about motivation theories or different leadership styles? Or what about coaching techniques or ways to hold people accountable? It all became a bit much, so instead I came up with this simple 4-step leadership process. Because sometimes less is more. So now I'll take you through the simple leadership process that goes back to basics. Now, step 1 in this simple model is to understand your people. It's very simple, get to know your people. So what sort of things should you get to know? There's lots of avenues to explore, so let's look at a couple of them. So I'd perhaps start with strengths and weaknesses. This includes key skills and experience that they bring to the table. What are they good at? Where do they feel they struggle? Do they lack confidence in certain areas? Now, I've heard some people say you shouldn't talk about weaknesses, that we should always talk about strengths. Now, I disagree with this. There's nothing wrong with understanding your weaknesses. In fact, it can help you either improve them or otherwise try to make sure they don't impact your performance too much. Next thing I'd look at is the likes and dislikes of each person. What sort of work do they really like and thrive on? What sort of work turns them off and gets them bored or frustrated? And you can also observe their personal style. Are they quiet or loud, outgoing or introverted, a thinker or a doer? Are they analytical or a get-stuck-in type of person? Then ask them about their direction. Where are they trying to go? What do they want to learn? What motivates them? And what's their career and life trajectory? And on the topic of leadership weaknesses, there's a related article I'd encourage you to check out. It'll be on the show notes page, thoughtfulleader.com/225. And the post is called Leadership Weaknesses, Use Them to Lead Better. So why is this the first step in the leadership process? Well, understanding your people is fundamental because it helps you with the other steps in the process to come. Everyone is different, so you need to tailor your approach to each individual. One-size-fits-all leadership doesn't work very well if you want to help people be at their best. Now, without this key fundamental information, you'll struggle to treat them in a way that motivates them, helps them to feel supported, and leads to better performance. Okay, so the second step of the process is to set clear expectations. Setting expectations is a really important part of leadership because it provides the foundation for accountability and feedback. Without clear expectations, people will go and do what they think is best, which might not match up with what you had in mind. Failing to set clear expectations also means it will be difficult to hold people accountable for their actions because they never had clear guidance in the first place. So when you're setting clear expectations, you might mention a few of these things. Firstly, you might say why the work or task is important, what the desired outcome should be, how the work should be done, who should be involved or could help you, when the work needs to be delivered, and any key constraints or standards that must be adhered to. So it seems pretty simple, right? You just follow that list, but not so fast. Unfortunately, we can't just set expectations in the same way for everyone. Well, okay, we could do that, but people might get annoyed, confused, or frustrated if we approach it the same way each time. So remember step 1, where we worked out what our people were like and try to understand our people? Well, here's where we start to use that information. So depending on the skills, capability, experience, motivation, attitude, and confidence of your team member, you may choose to set expectations slightly differently. For example, when you're working with a very experienced and motivated team member, you might include all the details so they understand what's involved. The point is, you'll flex your approach depending on what your team member is bringing to the table. And as your people grow in skill and confidence, you may lighten up on the details and let them take the lead. And there's a related article in the show notes page as well about how to delegate work to improve your team, thoughtfulleader.com/225. Now, step 3 in the process is to maintain sufficient oversight. Obviously, we can't just give people work to do and cross our fingers. We need a degree of oversight to feel comfortable that we're going to see the results we need. Now, once again, the degree of oversight required will very much depend on what your team members are bringing to the table. You need enough oversight so that you feel as if you have a good grasp of progress in the team. You also need it so that you can help the team members course correct when there's an issue or something goes off track. And you also want it so you can ensure that team members feel supported rather than vulnerable and isolated. And once again, this will differ across your team members. For an inexperienced, unskilled team member, you might take the approach of requiring greater oversight. Perhaps that means daily scheduled check-ins with ad hoc guidance along the way so you can see how things are progressing. Now, for the high performers in your team, using the same approach is likely to stifle them. They may feel micromanaged and disrespected, and you might see the unhappy side effect of a drop in motivation. And for those people struggling with this micromanaging issue, there is a related article, Are You a Micromanaging Boss? Here's How to Break the Habit, which goes into some ways to try to pull back a bit and not be a micromanager if you feel like you struggle with this sort of habit. And that's on the show notes page as well. Okay, and the final step of the process is provide useful feedback. Feedback is the crucial last step in the leadership process. Now, why is it so important? Well, good feedback helps people to understand how they're performing, whether they're on the right track or going off-road. It also helps you identify areas for improvement and key strengths. These will help you to tailor your efforts to help to develop your team and maximize their potential. Feedback also helps you to set a precedent for the future. When you deliver useful feedback, people know what you're expecting for next time. Poor performance followed by zero feedback often means that substandard performance is allowed to continue in the future. Now, feedback can be extremely motivational, especially if it helps people to improve or is simply recognition for a job well done. Now, many people suffer from a lack of praise and recognition in our workplaces, and positive feedback can help to bridge this gap. And ideally, your feedback should have a few characteristics. The first one is it should be timely. It should be delivered soon after or during the delivery of the work. It should be specific as well, rather than just feedback like, nice job. It's more useful to give them greater detail about what actually made the work good or what needs to be improved. And thirdly, you want to make sure the feedback is actionable as well. Feedback's better when the team member can do something about it, so help them understand what the next steps might be or work on a plan to come up with them together. Feedback is gold, so we should be providing it to our people and asking for it ourselves. It can help people develop, which is a key part of the leadership process, which shouldn't be overlooked. So obviously underneath of these 4 key steps, there are many nuances and details that we could focus on, but sometimes it's good to keep it simple. So if you're looking for a basic model for leadership, I think these 4 steps pretty much sum it up. And just to recap, we are starting with understanding our people. So we understand the strengths and weaknesses, the personal style, the capability, all this sort of stuff. Then we're setting clear expectations in step 2. In step 3, we're maintaining sufficient oversight so we can provide the right level of support for our people. And then in step 4, we are providing useful feedback so that people can improve the way they work and their methods and grow in skills and experiences. So it's a fairly simple process, and I'd love to get your take on this. What other steps would you add, or are they all there? Let me know on the comments page, thoughtfulleader.com/225. And while you're there, if you enjoy this episode or the podcast in general, I would love it if you could leave a positive review on your podcast app of choice. It helps me to get the word out and spread the word of Thoughtful Leader. Thank you for listening once again. Take care of yourselves and your team. Use this simple leadership process because leadership doesn't actually need to be too complicated. And I'll be back next week.